How many signs? We've done many signs already. Yeah. Today is November 19, 2016. November 19, 2016. How many signs have we done? All right. This is the sign of the Sabbath rest. This is the sign of what? Budding leaves. This is the sign of Jonah. This is the sign of the serpent. This is the sign of the siege. This is the sign of the covenant that Abraham had. Remember, he had to divide these animals. And this is the sign of the rent altar. This is the sign of the presence of Jesus, right? Yeah, presence of God. When this went between these divided animals, it symbolized the presence of God. So today we are going to study the sign of the times. Yeah. I figure, watch for falling rocks. No, this is watch for falling stars, and then also the sign of the abomination of desolation. I'm going to make it. I'm going to make something different. We are going to see if we have any questions by those who may be watching live right now. We don't know if there's anybody watching live. Huh?
You can say their name, Dad, and we know who's watching.
Yeah, I know, but this is going to be right. We'll find out. And you can see up here. You can go to this site and type in your questions. All right, we're going to see if this works and see. Okay, all right. Let me go to our slide. Where are we? Okay, here we go. We want to do the signs of the times, right? We were walking, me and Jackie were walking outside, and we saw the big moon. Did you see the? Oh yeah. Is it actually super moon? It is a super moon. Wow, it was big. It was big and yeah. There was a super moon. Okay, but let's do what we did last week, just as a recap. Okay. All right. Wow, that's a busy slide. Okay, but this is the star. This is the story of Ezekiel, the story of Jeremiah, the story of Isaiah, the story of the disobedient prophet, right? These are the three sieges: time of Daniel, time of Jehoiachin, time of Zedekiah. Oh, okay. All right. Hey, we got a question there. Hey, it works. Yeah, I could see. There's a question. The signs that we'll be covering today. All right, I can see. Yeah. Can you see it? Or you can see it there too. Okay. Right. It works. Okay. So we have an interactive channel. All right. Okay. This is the sign of the rent altar. The rent altar was first given here, and the rent altar was the sign when Josiah came and rent the altars in Bethel, right? At midnight, in Ezekiel 4, he laid on one side, and then for 390 days, and then he had to lay on the other side for 40 days, right? Until remember, it's the siege. The siege is in 587 because the destruction did not come until the following year, which is 586, right? So this 390 and 40 ends at the siege. And when you see this, you realize this is 350 years, which is prophetically similar to 3.5 years or 3.5 days, right? All right, okay. So 3.5 years is Jesus' ministration until he came to the cross. But before he came to the cross, he made a prediction that within one generation, which is 40 years, the temple is going to be destroyed, right? Temple is destroyed right here, right? Jonah, the sign of Jonah also. Jonah walked 3.5 days until he came to Nineveh, and he says, in 40 days you better repent, because otherwise in 40 days you will be destroyed. And Nineveh repented, right? So these are the signs of Jonah, the sign of the budding leaves, right? The sign of the budding leaves lines up with 9/11, and the sign of the serpent also lines up at 9/11. The sign of the serpent starts the 10 plagues, right? 10 plagues. And the third plague is the finger of God, and that lines up with midnight right here, right? The finger of God, right? The 10th plague is the firstborn was killed by the destroying angel, and that lines up with the Sunday law, which also lines up with the destruction of Jerusalem, right? Okay, so these signs, we can see the 3.5 followed by the generation, which is 40. 3.5 and 40. 3.5 and 1 generation. And this is the last generation, right? This we see also lines up, the 10 plagues also lines up with the French Revolution, right? That will be our next topic we will go to after we're done with the signs. Okay, so that's where we ended last week. Any questions? Anything else to add? All right, we're gonna go now to the signs of the times. Okay, when Jesus said, within one generation after the budding leaves shall be the temple will be destroyed. That's in Matthew 24, right? What else did he give? Right? He gave many more signs, right? You can find it in Matthew 24, Luke 13, and Mark 21. All right, we'll go through Matthew 24. Okay? Matthew 24. Verse 4 to, I guess, to 29. But I skipped several of them because I just wanted to pick out the significant signs that he put there. Jesus answered and said unto them. Now, if you were to go to the Bible, you would have to say that all of these will be in red, right? Because these are all Jesus' words. Starting from here. Take heed that no man deceive you. Many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars, rumors of wars, right? So many will come in my name. I make it yellow there. So these are the signs you got to watch out. Many shall come in my name, wars and rumors of war. What else? Nation shall rise against nation, kingdoms against kingdom, famines, pestilence, earthquakes. They shall deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and you have be hated of all nations for my name's sake. Remember, you have to be hated, not because you stole $1 million. No, you're gonna be hated because of my name's sake, right? Yeah. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, hate one another. Many false prophets will deceive, and iniquity shall abound, and he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. Okay, so when you see this, you're going to have to go through this, but there's going to be people who will, what? Endure. What does that mean? So you're going to have to go through all this, but some of you will endure. So is this talking about, something in the 1980s or something that could have happened before? This has to happen to the last generation, right? Because some of you have to endure this, right? But some of you are going to endure to the end, and you shall be saved. You have to endure being afflicted. Some of you will be killed. Some of you won't be killed. Many of you are going to be hated. Many of you are going to be betrayed. But some of you are going to endure. There shall arise false Christ, false prophets, great signs and wonders. All right. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, now he says something else. There's going to be a tribulation. And after that, the sun will be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven shall be shaken. When is the tribulation? Now this is talking about the tribulation. The 1260, you're right. When does the tribulation end? Oh, Ellen White is a little bit more specific than that. She actually says 25 years before 1798. Persecution ended. All right. So it does not end at 1798. The persecution by the papacy actually ends 25 years. Why? Yeah, it'll be shortened so that not everybody will die. Because if everybody will die if the papacy continues to kill. It's 1773. So Ellen White says it's about 1773 when the persecution ends. Immediately after that, you're going to see the sun darken, the moon shall not give her light, the stars fall from heaven, and the powers in heaven shall be shaken. These are the powers in heaven: sun, moon, and stars. Right. These are specifically. This is not the powers of Europe. That's another study. But anyway, now we'll look at Mark. Now, boy, basically a lot of the same things. All right, but the things that are different here, I'm not going to read all of these because you can do this on your own. This changes. The difference between this is now it says councils, synagogues, rulers, and kings. So it's talking about shall deliver you up to councils and synagogues. Right? It's a little bit more. There's a little bit more detail here. In other words, you're going to be brought to the churches. The churches is the one that's going to persecute you. All right. What else? It talks about troubles, not pestilences, and you are going to be delivered. But it doesn't say it shows signs and wonders. Okay, a lot of similar things because this is parallel. But when you compare these verses, you'll try to see if there's any differences. The biggest differences that I see is actually in Luke. All right, Luke. Many shall come in my name. All right, here wars and commotions. Oh, wars and rumors of war. Instead, it says commotions. Nations shall rise, great earthquakes, famine, pestilence, fearful sights, great signs, being persecuted in the synagogues, brought before rulers and kings. Okay, brought before rulers and kings. You're going to be betrayed by parent, brethren, kinsfolk, and friends. Put to death. The difference here is there shall not a hair of your head perish. Wow. So some will be delivered. Although it says you're going to be put to death, but not a hair of your head perish. Is that a contradiction or what? Hmm?
Some will die.
But those who don't die,
survive will not be harmed.
right, they will not be harmed. Yeah, those who escape. There's going to be some that escape, meaning this has to be talking about the last generation, right? And this one says there's be signs in the sun, moon, and stars. It doesn't say anything about the end of the tribulation, right? But here is talking about the distress of nations. Why is the nations distressed? Why is the waters troubled? Yeah, that's going to be, yeah, we study this. The distress of nations is because of the east wind, right? And the sea and the waves are roaring, right? The waters are troubled. This is talking about mentioning this. When you study more, it's talking about the east wind is going to trouble.
The sea and the waves roaring. Is that
Right.
pertaining to
The waters are troubled, right? Everybody's troubled, right? Right. So spiritually, when was the waters troubled in our time? 9/11. It's going to be troubled again at midnight cry, obviously, right? It's going to be at midnight. The king is troubled, right? Because Belshazzar was troubled at midnight when he saw the handwriting on the wall, right? So there's going to be trouble at 9/11. There's going to be kings troubled at midnight. There's going to be a midnight cry. The kings are troubled. The kings are troubled. The waters are troubled. The waters are troubled. Okay. So, okay. These are the signs of the times. Now, now I've got to ask you if any of you remember the difference between the definition of preterist versus historist. What's the difference of the preterist versus the historist? These are those who interpret Bible prophecy according to a specific way. There's preterist versus historist. How would the preterist interpret this?
It only applied to the Jewish?
No.
Yeah.
The past. Something with the past and something with the future. It only applies to like a certain people in the past.
Right.
But
How would the preterists interpret this? What would they say? When would all these be fulfilled? Well, the preterist would actually look at this and say, when will this be fulfilled? Which is actually true.
It's already done. Or it's still before.
Right.
it's already been fulfilled.
When was it fulfilled? 70 AD. In other words, this is only for the Jews.
Only for the Jews.
This is only for the Jews. All right. But what would 70 AD. All of these will be fulfilled before 70 AD. Before or at 70 AD. What happened at 70 AD? That's when Titus came and destroyed Jerusalem, right? Yeah. Okay, but what would the historicist, right? What would the historist say? This happened was fulfilled at 70 AD, but it will also be fulfilled spiritually in the end time, right?
That's the 70 Adventists.
Those are the historists, right? Yeah, because Martin Luther and the Protestant during the Protestant Reformation, he says, "Oh, the man of sin, that's got to be the papacy in the end of time." They were also historists. So what did the Jesuits come up with? They came up with the preterists. It was Loyola who actually came with the idea of the preterists, right? Yeah. So it was a counter-reformation tactic, right? So you see, a lot of people will say, okay, yeah, this has been fulfilled, but it was fulfilled during the time of the Jewish. It doesn't apply to us. These things don't apply to us. All right. Okay. Now I'm going to go a little bit, because I think this is important to read, because we sometimes read these stories, I mean the great controversy, and we read Ellen White's description of what happened at 70 AD. But where did Ellen White get that story? It's right from Flavius Josephus. Who's Josephus?
It's a historian.
Historian. Yeah. He's Jewish historian. He wrote the history of it's called The War of the Jews. It was published in 75 AD. 5 years after the fall, Okay. Now, he also, we went to the place, we went to Masada. He was the only one that wrote the history of Masada, right?
Yeah.
It was Josephus. Yeah. The story of Masada, we only find it from Josephus. But what did he write also? He wrote about the 70 AD. What happened around that time? Okay, I figured we need to read this, all right? Thus were the miserable people persuaded by these deceivers, and such as belied God himself, while they did not attend nor give credit to the signs, right? That were so evident. There was a lot of signs, but they didn't listen to it. They didn't take heed of it, and did so plainly foretell their future desolation. But like men infatuated, without either eyes to see or minds to consider, did not regard the denunciations that God made to them. Right? The Jewish people, they didn't care. Thus there was a star resembling a sword which stood over the city, and a comet that continued a whole year. Okay. There was a comet around that time. Can you verify at the NASA site when the Halley's Comet came? Yes. You can actually go back to NASA and find out exactly on what day the Halley's Comet came. Yeah, it's in there because they can calculate it. It goes at the same cycle over and over, even from Babylonian times. So I went back to NASA site, and the Halley's Comet site, and find out when was it that Halley's Comet was seen. Halley's Comet was seen in February of 66 AD. 66 AD. So they saw Halley's Comet, and I think it only goes every 85 years or something like this. Every 85 years. But they saw Halley's Comet, right?
That was the first time.
Oh no, Halley's Comet they've been seeing since the time of the Babylonians. The Babylonians have been seeing Halley's Comet, and they write it every time.
Wasn't there also that they were saying that during the birth of Christ, that was the Halley's Comet, that the Magi saw?
They think, some people say that it was it. But at 66 AD, the Halley's Comet came. Thus also before the Jewish rebellion, and before these commotions which preceded the war, when people were come in great crowds to the feast of the unleavened bread, right? A great light shone around the altar and the holy house, that it appeared to be bright daytime, which lasted for half an hour. This light seemed to be good sign to the unskillful, but so interpreted by the sacred scribes as to portend these events that would follow immediately upon it. So there was like a star, there was a comet. When you see a comet, you're going to see falling stars. So that's the falling stars, right? And a light shone around the altar and the holy house. There was like signs and wonders. The eastern gate of the inner temple, which was of brass, vastly heavy, and been difficult to shut, even by 20 men, it opened on its own, and they had trouble even closing it. So the priest says, "Wow, this opened on its own. It means that the enemies are going to come through the gates, right? The enemy. This means that the enemy is going to come through the gates, all right? Okay, I'm going to skip down here. Okay, here you go. I suppose the account of it would seem to be a fable, were it not related by those that saw it, and were not the events that followed it be of so considerable a nature as to deserve such signals. For before sun setting, chariots and troops of soldiers in their armor were seen running about among the clouds and surrounding the cities. Some signs and wonders. Yeah, this is like, yeah, like armies were attacking Jerusalem. This is what Josephus wrote. No, they saw it. It's like signs and wonders. Yeah. Some people are like, what are those? You know, they say, maybe they think it's like apparitions. Or apparition, something they can actually see, but it's like a miracle or something like that. Yeah, like a delusion. They're seeing things. Okay, all right. Moreover, at the feast which we call Pentecost, right, the priest felt a quaking and heard a great noise, and after that they heard the sound of a great multitude saying, "Let us remove hence." Wow. Yeah. The glory is gonna be left. But what is still more terrible? Now there was one Jesus, a man named Jesus, the son of Ananus, a plebeian. What's a plebeian? A regular guy, and a husbandman, who 4 years before the war began, 4 years before the war. And how long did the war last? Remember, 3.5 years. So for 7 years, for 7.5 years, right? About 7.5 years. At the time when the city was in great peace and prosperity. Oh, at the time of peace and prosperity. Came to the feast at the tabernacles. He began on the sudden to cry loud. He started crying loud. A voice from the east, a voice from the west, a voice from the four winds. I highlighted four winds because this is very important. Was it the four winds? We know about the four winds, right? A voice from the four winds, a voice against Jerusalem and the holy house, a voice against the bridegroom and the bride, a voice against the whole people. This was his cry as he went about day and night in all the lanes of the city. However, certain of the most eminent among the populace had great indignation at this dire cry of his, and took up the man and gave him a great number of severe stripes. He was beaten. Yet did not he either say anything for himself or anything peculiar to those who chastised him, but still went on with the same words which he cried before. Hereupon the magistrates, supposing, as the case proved to be, that this was a sort of divine fury in the man, brought him to the Roman procurator, where he was whipped till his bones were laid bare. Ooh. Yet he did not make any supplication for himself, nor shed any tears, but turning his voice to the most lamentable tone possible, at every stroke of the whip his answer was, "Woe, woe to Jerusalem." And when Albanus, for he was then our procurator, asked him who he was, and whence he came, and why he uttered such words, he made no manner of reply to what he said, but still did not leave off his melancholy ditty, till Abanus took him to be a madman, and dismissed him. He continued to say, "Woe, woe to Jerusalem." Now during all the time that passed before the war began, this man did not go near any of the citizens, nor was seen by them while he said so, but he every day uttered these lamentable words as if it were his premeditated vow, "Woe, woe to Jerusalem." Nor did he give ill words to any of those that beat him every day. Well, he was beaten. Now this is in Jerusalem, right? Yeah. And you know what? When we walked around Jerusalem, it's really not that big, right? It's really quite small, right? Everybody, if somebody did something like this, the whole city would know. Nor good words to those that gave him food. But this was his reply to all men, and indeed no other than a melancholy presage of what has to come. The cry was the loudest at the festivals. And it continued this ditty for 7 years and 5 months, without growing hoarse or being tired therewith, until the very time that he saw his presage in earnest fulfilled in our siege. Until the siege, when it ceased. For as he was going round upon the wall, he cried out with his utmost force, Woe, woe to the city. See, so until the siege, and then the siege stopped, right? Remember, if the siege stopped? Yeah, it became between Cestus and Titus, right? And then the siege started again at the time of Titus. Woe, woe to the city again, to the people and to the holy house. And just as he added to the last, Woe, woe to myself also. There came a stone out of one of the engines, the siege engines, and smote him and killed him immediately. And as he was uttering the very same presage, he gave up the ghost.
Is that about Jesus?
No, no.
No,
This is a man named Jesus.
Jesus.
In 70 AD was saying this,
Keeps
crying, Woe to the east.
Him Jesus.
His
Because
name-
in the Bible, someone was
Yeah,
crying
there was
and
no
walk
name.
talking and
in the Bible there was no name.
This is 70 AD.
yeah.
But
Before, for 7 years, for 7.5 years.
5 months.
7 years and 5 months. He's crying like this.
Yeah.
But Josephus gave him a name. Josephus,
His name was Jesus.
His name was Jesus.
Josephus wrote his name.
Yeah, starting
It
63.
doesn't say his name.
There was no name in the Bible.
No, it doesn't say in the Bible, but Ellen White wrote about this, right? Great Controversy, page 30. Ellen White wrote this. All the predictions given by Christ, see, all the signs of the times in Matthew 24, right? Luke 21, Mark, all that. All the predictions given by Christ concerning the destruction of Jerusalem were fulfilled to the letter. Right? Signs and wonders appeared. Chariots and men of war gathering for battle. The eastern gate opening up. Right? And for 7 years a man continued to go up and down the streets of Jerusalem. But Ellen White did not say his name. Ellen White didn't say his name. Declaring the woes that would come to the city. Day and night he chanted the wild dirge. Voice from the east, voice from the west, voice from the four winds, a voice against Jerusalem and the temple, a voice against bridegroom and bride. This strange being was imprisoned and scourged, but no complaint escaped his lips. To insult and abuse he answered only, Woe to Jerusalem, woe, woe to the inhabitants thereof. His waning cry ceased, not until he was slain in the siege he had foretold. Okay, this is something that we studied before. What's wrong with this man? What was wrong with him?
He stayed in his city.
That's it.
He didn't escape.
That's right.
He was given another
He didn't
word.
take his own advice.
No.
He said, Woe, woe.
And then he said, Woe to me.
Woe to me, and he died.
So he said, yeah, woe, woe, and then he did not escape. Because Jesus also said, when you see the siege and you see that they're backing up, you got to run to the mountain. So there's going to be a people who's going to say apostasy to the church. They're going to be preaching apostasy. But what do?
They stayed in the city.
They still stay in the apostate church. Oh boy. What is going to happen to them? They're going to die in that city. Right? Because Ellen White in Great Controversy 30 paragraph 3, what does she say in paragraph 4? The next thing that she says. All the Christians that fled, none of them died. So, was this man a Christian then? Because he died? Well, because he did not leave. But because all the Christians that left, none of them died. Right? Yeah. Yeah. This is Great Controversy, page 30. Right. Not one Christian perished in the destruction of Jerusalem. That's the next paragraph right after this. Not one Christian. So he probably was a Christian, but he did not believe God's warning. Jesus warned, right? Okay. All right. Okay. So the signs of the times, right? So the signs of the times, the falling stars. All right. When was it? It was November 13, 1833. Right. Ellen White said this was the last of the signs. Right.
The very last?
The last of the signs that she said in Matthew. Matthew 24 said there's going to be a sun and the moon will be darkened, and then the falling stars, right? This was the last of the signs.
That is in Matthew 24.
Right, Matthew 24. This is the last of the signs because that's in 1833. November 13, 1833. Okay. And there's another one that's the darkest day. The darkest day is May 19, 1780. Right? The sun will not, the sun will be darkened. Remember, Matthew said it was after the tribulation. When did the tribulation end? Remember, Jillian, you calculated that? 17 what? 1773. And the sun was darkened on 1780. 7 years after the tribulation stopped. Right. Yeah. Now, the Matthew also says there was other things that happened, which like earthquake. But that earthquake was not after the tribulation. That the Great Lisbon earthquake happened on November 1, 1755. Yeah, Lisbon, Portugal, 1755. Right. Okay. All these. Now, why is this? What's the significance of the signs of the times? You have to know the signs of the times. Look at all these people. You know, with the Millerites. You know, I looked up Adventist Review, and they described it. At that time, you know, J.N. Andrews, John Loughborough, Annie and Uriah Smith, in 1833, they were just toddlers. James White was about 12 years old. Ellen Harmon, she was 5 years old, going on 6 years old. Right? But the father, let's see, Joseph Harvey Wagner. You know Wagner and Jones? Yeah. The father of Wagner. Remembered when he was a boy and the stars fell. This is what he wrote. It was the privilege of this writer of these pages. Okay, let me just make this bigger. Okay. It was the privilege of the writer of these pages to behold this scene, and it was one never to be forgotten. They began to fall, meaning the stars. They began to fall about an hour before midnight, increasing in frequency until in a few hours they became a perfect shower. They could no more be counted than one can count the fast falling flakes of snow in a hard storm. They continued to fall without any diminution of numbers until the dawn of the day. Can you imagine? From midnight until the dawn of the day, until sun came up, it was still falling. Until the dawn of the day obscured them. And when the approaching lights of the sun paled them in the east, they still colored the western sky. And when the spreading light obscured them in every direction, occasionally one of great brilliancy would leave its trace in the west, showing that they were still falling. Wow. Right? So, what happened to the Protestants? Because they were Protestants at that time, right? Yeah. None of these people were Adventists. This was 1833. William Miller was just starting to preach. Right? So William Miller was starting to preach, and this happened. So they were Protestants. On what happened when they see the sign? What do they have to do when they see the sign? Obviously not run to the mountains. What do they have to do? They have to go to the Bible and study. Right? That's a big difference between this. Yeah. You have to go to the Bible, see the signs. You go to the Bible, study, because their close of probation did not come until 1844, right? It took a while for the Protestants at that time. If they rejected the signs, their close of probation did not come until April 19, 1844, when the second angel came, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. So I had to look up the four winds, right? He says, yeah, because isn't it? Didn't the man named Jesus? He says, "Woe to Jerusalem, woe to the four winds," right? Woe to the four winds. There's going to be a judgment. This is the sign that the judgment is going to come, right? There's going to be woe to Jerusalem, woe to the temple, woe that comes from the four winds. Okay, so I decided to go look up what are these four winds. Now, the most common thing that we remember in our studies about the four winds, what does the four winds represent? The angry horse, right? That's 20 MR 216.6. The four winds represent the angry horse. But the four winds represent much more than the angry horse. Because the four winds are going to come to Jerusalem, right? Okay. Zechariah 2, verse 5 and 6. For I, says the Lord, will be unto her a wall of fire round about, and will be glory in her midst. Ho, ho. Ho, ho. Come forth. It's like woe, woe to Jerusalem. Yeah, ho, ho. That is a doubling. And flee from the land of the north, says the Lord. I have spread you abroad as the four winds of the heaven. Okay. What does the four winds do? It scatters you. It scatters you. And what happens when the Jewish people were scattered? They were scattered to what? Into captivity, right? They were taken by Babylon. Right? They were scattered. They were taken into captivity. So the four winds bring judgment and scatter these people into captivity. In other words, it's their judgment. It scattered them into the four winds will scatter them all over, right? They were scattered all over Europe. A lot of them was in Eastern Europe, right? Diaspora, that's the diaspora. All over the world, yeah. But a lot of them are scattered to Europe. Okay. Jeremiah 49. Because if this man named Jesus in 70 AD, he was saying the four winds, woe, woe, Jerusalem, woe, woe, the four winds. He must have known it from the Old Testament. So I had to look up the four winds in the Old Testament. Jeremiah 49. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, behold, I will break the bow of Elam, the chief of their might. And upon Elam will I bring the four winds from the four quarters of heaven, and will scatter them, right? Toward all those winds. And there shall be no nation whether the outcasts of Elam shall not come. So they, like the Israelites, they will be scattered such that there will be no more nation any longer. Right? This is their judgment. Okay. Daniel 11. There's the four winds again. We've been studying this a lot. Also, in the first year of Darius the Mede, I stood to confirm and to strengthen him. And now will I show thee the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia. Oh. And the fourth shall be far richer than they. Oh boy. We are living right in this fourth king, right? And this rich king will use his strength, and through his riches he shall stir up against the realm of Grecia. All right? And a mighty king shall stand up. Now we know that this mighty king actually represents Alexander the Great. But this mighty king shall stand up and shall rule with great dominion. Right? Dominion here actually means moshel or parallel. he will have a parallel empire. In other words, it's going to be like the two sticks that are parallel. This king will be a king of a parallel kingdom, right? Right? But remember, he used to be the king of Persia, meaning he used to be the president of America. But now he's going to be a king of the world, of parallel kingdom, right? Yeah, a parallel kingdom. It's going to be run together, right? So the sixth kingdom ends and the seventh kingdom starts, right? You see that? Right. So there is one goes down, the other one is rising, but it doesn't, and it's not back to back. There's still a parallel kingdom. And do according to his will. And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken, and shall divide it toward the four winds of heaven. Wow. So he's going to be, his kingdom is going to be given to the four winds. There's going to be judgment given to his kingdom, and not to his posterity, not according to his dominion which he ruled. For his kingdom shall be plucked up, even for others beside those. His kingdom is already gone, right? So this president's kingdom, America has already fallen, but now he's now ruling United Nations, right? But then, because that kingdom has been given to the four winds. Okay. That's really tough to understand, if you haven't been studying the way line upon line to show that Medo-Persia is actually America and Grecia is the world, which is United Nations. But there's going to be a king, which the fourth king, he will be the king of America, which is the president of America, but then he will then become the king of United Nations, right? Because America will be hit by the four winds of heaven. This is in Ezekiel. Now we go back to Ezekiel. We've kind of strayed away from Ezekiel for a while. Now we'll go back to Ezekiel. Ezekiel 14. Well, I'm going a lot more than just 12 and 13. We're pretty much going to go read the whole entire book of Ezekiel here. Okay. The whole book of Ezekiel. The word of the Lord came again to me, saying, Son of man, when the land sinneth against me by trespassing grievously, then will I stretch out my hand. I'm going to stretch out my hand upon it, and I will break the staff of the bread thereof. Oh, I'm going to break the staff of the bread. Does that remind you of anything? Break the staff of your bread? Doesn't that sound like 25:20? Yeah, wasn't there in Leviticus 26? I will break the staff of your bread. That's for against Jehoiachin, right? Break the staff of the bread, and I will send famine, all right, and cut man and beast from it. Though these three men, Noah, Daniel, and Job, were in it, they should deliver but their own souls by their righteousness. So Noah, Daniel, and Job cannot save their own children. They can only save their own self by their righteousness, right? Okay, and then there's the second one. If I cause noisome beasts, so I'm going to break the staff of your bread, and I'm going to send noisome beasts. And even if these three men were alive, they can never deliver their sons and daughters, right? And I will bring a sword. Okay, and if these three men were still alive, they can never wow. Actually, Ezekiel wrote it 4 times. Yeah. I will send a pestilence. And even if Noah, Daniel, and Job, they can't. It's so important that he had to repeat it 4 times. You cannot deliver your own family. You have to deliver your own self by your righteousness, right? And I will send you what? Break the staff of your bread, noisome beast, a sword and pestilence. Right? I will give you this by stretching out my hand and give you these judgments. 4 judgments.
There's 4 winds.
Yeah, there you go. Right? Stretch out my hand. So now you add another layer to it, saying stretch out my hand. What does stretch out my hand and these 4 judgments? Okay? But we continue with Ezekiel still till the end of Ezekiel 14. For thus saith the Lord God, how much more when I send my 4 sore judgments. Remember the 4 sore judgments upon what? It's upon Jerusalem. Sword, famine, noisome beast, and pestilence, right? The 4 sore judgments. Yet behold, there shall be left a remnant. I'm going to destroy Jerusalem, but still there's going to be a what? There's going to be a remnant. That shall be brought forth, both sons and daughters. And this remnant will be only men that have not been, with virgins? And some people said, oh, the 144 is only what?
Virgins.
They are virgins. They've never been contaminated by women. But here, no, it says, this remnant is both sons and daughters. Behold, they shall come forth unto you, and ye shall see their way and their doings, and ye shall be comforted concerning the evil that I have brought upon Jerusalem, concerning all that I have brought upon it, and they shall comfort you. This remnant will comfort you. See, comfort. Comfort. You know, the remnant will have the comforter in them. They will have the Spirit of Christ in them. They have a character, right? They have the character of. So there's, even though Jerusalem is hit by the 4 judgments, a remnant will come up which will have the character of Christ, right, in them, right? Right. This is the whole of Ezekiel. Ezekiel 14 is talking about stretching the hand and the 4 judgments against Jerusalem, but a what? A remnant will come up, right? That's Ezekiel 14.
This one is, the hand is stretched, not just the finger of God.
Yeah, there's a stretching of the hand. Now look, we have to go back. Where is another stretching? We got to look for a stretching of the hand. Moses, the time of Moses. Moses and Aaron, we don't have to read the whole thing, but Moses and Aaron was told by God, okay, go to Pharaoh. Before you go to Pharaoh, go to the children of Israel, go to the elders first, and tell them what I'm going to do to, what? To Egypt, right? I'm gonna take you out of Egypt because all the things that they've done to you, they have made you slaves for 4 generations, and then I'm gonna take you out now so that you can worship me, right? Okay. Let's see. Maybe it's it. Okay. Let's start here. And they shall hearken to thy voice, right? And thou shalt come, thou and the elders of Israel, unto the king of Egypt, and ye shall say unto him, the Lord God of the Hebrews hath met with us, and now let us go, we beseech thee, 3 days' journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God, right? This is before they went to Pharaoh. And I am sure that the king of Egypt will not let you go. No, not by a mighty hand. You are not going to be able to rebel against him, right? Yeah, you cannot do anything. All you just ask. But he's not going to let you go. And I will stretch out my hand. God said what? He will stretch out his hand and will smite Egypt with all my wonders. With all, now the wonders is the signs, is those plagues, right? I'm going to strike Egypt with those judgments. How many judgments does he get? Well, there's 10, right? There's 10, all right? He said, before he does it, he says, I'm going to stretch out my hand and I will strike Egypt with all my judgments, right? Okay. So when was this fulfilled? Because this is, he said he was going to do this. When did he actually do it? when did he stretch out his hand over Egypt? Remember, we've done the 10 plagues. When did he stretch out his hand? Well, the finger of God was on the 3rd plague. When did he stretch out his hand? Okay, well, we'll go here now. The answer is on Exodus 9, verse 12 to 17. You know what? I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna try this and turn this off. Okay, a little bit bigger. Okay, let's go. All right, Exodus 9. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, and he hearkened not unto them, as the Lord has spoken unto Moses. And the Lord said unto Moses, Rise up early in the morning, and stand before Pharaoh, and say unto him. So you have to rise up. What does rise up mean? Oh, you are going to be lifted up. This has got to be at your binding, somebody's binding time here. Rise up early in the morning and stand before Pharaoh, and say unto him, Thus saith the Lord God of the Hebrews, Let my people go, that they may serve me. Right? For I will at this time send all my plagues upon thine heart, and upon thy servants, upon thy people. I'm going to send all my plagues, right? And that thou mayest know that there is none like me in all the earth. For now I will stretch out my hand, and will smite thee and thy people with pestilence, right? I will stretch out my hand and send all my plagues. When was this? When did he say this?
Before the 7th plague.
Yeah. He said this before the 7th plague. Now, isn't this curious? Why did he already sent 6 plagues, right? Okay, he already sent 6 plagues. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And he says, rise up. And then he says right here, I'm going to send you all my plagues. Didn't he say send 6? Right here he says, all my plagues. These are all his plagues. For some reason he combined all of these last 4. 4, right? I will stretch out my hand. These are the 4 judgments upon Egypt. But also he's going to stretch out his hand and send the 4 judgments against Israel also, right? Against Jerusalem, right? Because at this time it's at midnight cry. So there's going to be these 4 judgments are going to hit. That's the 4 winds. That's the 4 winds are going to be let loose.
I thought there were 7 plagues.
Yeah.
After
There were
When Pharaoh.
in Pharaoh, how many are there? 10 plagues.
There are 10. Oh yes.
There's 10 plagues.
10.
Right. The 7 plagues is at the last 7 plagues. That's after Michael stand up, right? Yeah, this is before, right? So there's this. So the last 7 plagues. What was the 4 judgment that he's sending? Famine, pestilence, sword, and beasts. Right? That's also like the angry horse. Now, if you look at Ellen White's quotes, the 4 winds are also she calls it conquest and revolutions. Right? But she also says it's the angry horse. In other words, the 4 winds is much more than Islam. It's conquest and revolutions. That's why at the School of Prophecy, it says it's going to be more than just Islam. It's going to be a lot more than just Islam. Because look at this. All these 4. There's going to be hail. Hail. What does the hail do? It destroys all the crops. So it's famine, right? What about the locust? Well, that's Islam. They eat whatever's left. Pestilence, I guess you can call this pestilence, but pestilence is actually illnesses, right? Pestilence is illnesses, but this we know this is Islam, because there's going to be famine, and there's going to be the angry horse right here. This is Islam, right? That's the locust. And what is this? The dark day. They can't worship the sun anymore because there's right. Sun worship here. This is talking about sun worship. So God's people are going to start worshiping the sun here. Right? And then this is when the son of Pharaoh is killed by the destroyer. Right.
Destroying angel.
Yeah. Okay. So we know that there's going to be the four plagues, the four judgments between midnight cry and Sunday law. Now I'm already preparing for the French Revolution. The reign of terror happens right here. The reign of terror. That's when the bloodbath starts. The bloodbath starts in where? America. These are the four plagues, right? Can you imagine when there's a bloodbath that's going to start, there's going to be civil war and anarchy. Yeah, because there's going to be people who are with the populists fighting against the people who are against the populists. Do you see that happening? It's going to start. People who are for populism and people who are against populism are going to have a war. And it's going to happen right here. And what's going to happen? They are going to take control in their whole hands, and all of them are going to have guns. It's going to be civil war, and it's going to be bloodbath right here. And can you imagine what's going to happen when there's going to be a famine also hit at that time? There's going to be civil war, there's going to be a famine, and what happens right there? Islam going to attack. Everything is perfect because now
honestly it's easy for Islam to attack, because if we're already starting all this civil, if we can't even get the country together, then that's why it's
because right now the Muslims are being marginalized, right? And they're not happy with what's going on, right? They're gonna hate America even more. I mean, I just see it. Yeah. Can you imagine? It's perfect. The storm is just perfect. It fits perfect right here, right? We are living right here. We are living right here. We're giving warning. The warning is given for us right here. This is what's going to happen right here. Okay? The four winds are going to happen to America right here. Total chaos is going to be right here.
It's going to be a rapid progression.
Right. It's going to be rapid. And the thing about it is that Sunday law is going to come here. Napoleon is given the deadly wound. But that's the beginning of the prophecy. At the end of the prophecy, Napoleon is going to heal the deadly wound so that the papacy can give the Sunday law, right? Right? So, who's Napoleon? He's Robespierre. He's Robespierre that changes and becomes a dictator, right? Right. So he used to have a noble cause against the establishment, but then he becomes a tyrant. He becomes a tyrant, and now he uses violence. Is he already talking violently? Right? So the people now will not think it very unusual to use violence, because their leader is already talking very violently. So then a civil war is going to happen, famine is going to hit, Islam's going to hit, and darkness, sun worship is going to start, right? Wow. Yeah. So now when you see, this is the other thing that I just noticed here. There's 6 here, and if all these are lumped together, meaning they're 1, these are considered all, and there's 6, how many would there be? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, this is 1, right? Yeah. Wouldn't that be like the 7 last plagues? Because the last of the 7 last plagues is the worst of them, right? If we have 4 lumped together, wouldn't that be worse than just each one of these? So then I said, okay, wait a minute. Let's go to the 7 last plagues. Where do you find the 7 last plagues? Revelation 16. What's the first plague? Noisome, grievous sores. Oh, wait a minute. That's here. Okay. What's the second plague? Sea becomes blood. Okay, that's sea becomes blood right there. What's the third plague? River and fountains become blood. Oh, okay. A little bit different. Okay. What's the fourth? Sun scorches the earth. You know, I don't see sun scorching the earth here. So it's a little different. And the fifth is darkness. Well, there's a darkness right there. The sixth is the Euphrates dries up so the kings of the east can attack. Oh, that's here. Right? That's the locust right here. That's the swarm also right here. And the seventh is the biggest one. Earthquake, islands fled away, mountains will not be found, and plague of the great hail. That's the 7th plague. And that's the biggest one. So all the 7 plagues, you see some characteristics that are similar to the 10 plagues, but they're not that similar. Yeah, there's some differences there. But when you see that if this is all lumped into one as 4, and this is when the hand of the Lord is stretched, and He will give you all the plagues, meaning all of these will be lumped as one, kind of like, you know. And all of these will hit Jerusalem, which is, which is what? The church. But it's going to hit also Egypt, which is the land where God's people was. So it's going to hit America, right? If it hits Egypt, right? Because Egypt is the land where God's people was. Right? So it's going to hit America. And it all fits. This is the biggest time, that is the biggest thing that we start to realize all these troubles does not happen after the Sunday law, right? It's before the Sunday law.
Because that would bring about the Sunday law.
And they bring the Sunday law. Okay. All right. Let's see. Okay. Maybe how are we with time? Okay. We're still okay. All right, I gotta go. Let me go into this, and then we'll, right? What is the difference between the signs of the times and the abomination of desolation? Right. When you see the signs of the times, can you react and study the Bible and find out what's going to happen? Yes, you can. What about the abomination of desolation? When it comes, what do you have to do? You have to go back to your Bible and study some more? It's too late. You have to flee immediately, right? That's a big difference between abomination of the sign of abomination of desolation and the signs of the times. Big difference. Right? You have to know this, because if you miss this, you're going to be caught in the city. And you're going to be hit by one of those rocks by the engines, right? All right. Yeah. Jesus, remember Jesus? He was saying, whoa, 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 and he got hit by the rock himself, and he died. The fake Jesus. All right. See, this is abomination of desolation. Okay, we'll do abomination of desolation. We'll see how far we go. Okay. All right. Abomination of desolation. When is the abomination of desolation? Okay, Jesus said it. This is all red letters here. Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21. The abomination of desolation is standing in the holy place. All right? The abomination of desolation is standing where it ought not. And is also Jerusalem encompassed by armies. All right? So it's the armies of Rome encompassing Jerusalem, standing in the holy place where it ought not. Okay?
It's supposed not to.
All right. So if you want to know what the abomination of desolation is, you just combine those three. The armies of Rome encompassing Jerusalem, standing in the holy place where it ought not to be. Right? That's the abomination of desolation. Okay? Do you get that? Yeah, now you got to know what that means. What does that mean? Right? You already know the definition because Jesus gave you the definition. What does that mean? You know, the easiest way is to go to the cheat sheet. I tell you, this will make it so easy. Go to the cheat sheet. When the idolatrous standards of the Romans should be set up in the holy ground where it's not supposed to be, what do you have to do? You have to escape and make no delay. It has to be immediately obeyed, right? You must not hesitate a moment lest you be involved in the general destruction, just like Jesus crying, woe, woe to Jerusalem. So what is the abomination of desolation? It is the idolatrous standards. Okay, it's very, very important to understand that. Why? Is it just the Sunday law?
No.
It's the idolatrous standards. It's not just the Sunday law. Right. It's the idolatrous standards. What are the idolatrous standards of Roman? Right? There's gonna be so many. But when you start thinking of it, you're gonna see a lot more. It's already been setting up in the holy place. Remember, they should not be standing there. So what are they doing? The Roman armies is a state power, right? State power is standing in church territory. Well, when it's an army, what's it doing? It's doing it by force, right? It's enforcing idolatrous standards. So there's already state and church joined together, right? And it's forcing the Roman standards into the Christian church, so to speak. Okay. When did this happen? Yeah. Now when it says spoken by Daniel, which verse in the Bible? I'm going to give it to you right here. The Bible, where it says, when the abomination of desolation stands where it ought not to be, just like Daniel says, which verse in the Bible was Jesus referring to? Right, it's right here. Daniel 11 verse 36. And the king shall do according to his will, and he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished, for that is determined. Why is that? Is he now a king? Shouldn't be declaring himself God, right? Why is he saying I am above God? Because he's now meddling with church. He's meddling in church territory now. Yet I am above God. I'm forcing his standards now in the church now. See, he's magnifying himself above every god, speaking marvelous things against the God of gods. Right? He's actually doing religious, I guess, duties now. Right? Okay, this is what was referred to by Jesus when he was referring to spoken by Daniel. Now, in that time, now Paul also referred to this. Paul during his time was saying, "Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who what does he do? He opposeth and exalteth himself." Okay, he's magnified himself above every god, right? So Paul was referring to what? He was referring to this. See, this man of sin, after he's revealed, he's going to oppose and exalt himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he is as God, sitteth in the, he's sitting where he ought not to be, in the temple, showing himself that he is God, right? Right? Isn't Paul referring to this? Right? Specifically, right? For the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now letteth. Oh, there you go. Who now letteth, until he be taken out of the way. Well, that's another study right there. Yeah. Because this is who now letteth. Who is it that letteth such that somebody can be taken out of the way? Who's taken out of the way? Paganism. So that papalism can rise, right? And the king that opposeth and exalteth himself and stands in the temple of God is the papacy, right? Yeah. Okay. So this is talking about Rome forcing its standards, right? Rome forcing its standards onto the Christian church. Now, if this happens in our time, and it should happen before or after the Sunday law or at the Sunday law? It has to be before. It cannot be after. Obviously, it cannot be after. Why? Well, that's true. You have to flee to the mountains. But at the Sunday law, it's a civil. America now makes a law, right? It's a Sunday law now. But here, the king is speaking. He's talking in the church now, and he says he is God. So this has to happen before, right? There's no law that makes you worship on Sunday yet. So how is the Roman standard coming into the church before the Sunday law? How can it come into the church? How could the Roman standards come into the church right now then? That's right.
Grasping the hand of the...
Because the church is falling away first. Right. Because there has to be a falling away first. So what does a following away first mean? There's a compromise. There's a compromise. So they are taking in the standards of Rome right now. So how does the standards of Rome is in the church? Is it because the Rome actually forces itself onto the church? Yeah, because they are actually bringing in the standards of Rome. So how is it forced? Right now it's not forced. But what if it's said, you have to follow this because it's now part of the 28 fundamentals, and if you don't follow the 28 fundamentals, you will be disfellowship. Is that a forcing? So who's the one that's forcing then? The church. It's not the Romans that's forcing it, the Roman standards. It's the church that's forcing it. Can you imagine that? So when it's a following in first, it's the church that falls away and forces the Roman standards upon its own members. And then the man of sin will be revealed, right? Okay. Yeah. Oh, wow. That's pretty amazing. Okay. So this is the following of first. Following of first is which church? Pergamos. The church of compromise. Right. The church of compromise. Right. Do you see that? Is it happening now? Yes. Absolutely. The 7 churches are being repeated right now because there's a compromise in the church. And after that, after Pergamos, who comes? Thyatira. And Thyatira is persecution. The man of sin is being revealed. When the man of sin is revealed and he has no longer any opposition, what he will do? He will go back to his old methods. Right? Right now he's being opposed. He cannot do anything that he wants to. But when he can do anything he wants to, he will go back to his old modus operandi. Right? He will persecute any heretics. Right? All the heretics. So this Pergamos followed by Thyatira. So there's a falling away before the man of sin is revealed. All right? Yeah. Pergamos is when the pagan standards come into the church. Right? When does the pagan standards start coming into the church? During the time of Paul, when he says, okay, you know what? Jesus is not going to come until you first see the pagan standards coming to the church. When did the pagan standards come into the church? When was Pergamos? 321, right? That was Constantine. What happened to Constantine? He was baptized. And then what did he do? He changed Sabbath to Sunday. There was a Sunday law, right? So the standards of Rome is established, right, in the church. And the church accepted it. It was Pergamos. After that, Thyatira. 538 was when the time of Justinian, right? Then the persecution started because he has no opposition now. Because he is now called the corrector of heretics. Yeah, he can correct all heretics. Yeah, any heretics, I can correct them. Now he can persecute, right? And what do they have to do? They have to run to the wilderness, right? Yeah. So, you know, we're living in the Pergamos, Thyatira will come, and then we have to run to the wilderness, right? Isn't it true? Same thing happening. Yeah, it happened before and it's going to happen again, all right? Okay. Little by little, at first in stealth and silence, and then more openly as it increased strength and gained control of the minds, the mystery of iniquity carried forth a deceptive and blasphemous work. Almost imperceptibly, the customs of heathenism found their way into the Christian church. The spirit of compromise and conformity was restrained for a time by the fierce persecutions which the church endured under paganism, right? The fierce persecution, which church was being persecuted? No, before, when it was still pure. Which one was before Pergamos? Yeah, which one? Smyrna. Smyrna was the one that was persecuted, right? Ephesus lost its first love, right? Smyrna was the one that was persecuted. And then when there was no persecution, then they compromised. That was Pergamos at the time of Constantine, right? Yeah. Okay, but as persecution ceased and Christianity entered the courts and palace of kings, she laid aside the humble simplicity of Christ and his apostles for the pomp and pride of pagan priests and rulers. In place of the requirements of God, she substituted human theories and traditions. The nominal conversion of Constantine. Oh, okay, that's kind of easy to remember actually, because the Sunday law is 321. So the nominal conversion of Constantine is 312. Okay, it's not that difficult. I'm gonna the year 312 is when he converted, nominal conversion just by name. He converted everybody, all his army was all baptized all together. Now we're all Christian. And 3 to 1, Sunday law. All right, make it easy for you. All right, I just gave you a clue how to remember that. All right. All right, the nominal conversion of Constantine in the early part of the century caused great rejoicing, and the world, cloaked with a form of righteousness, walked into the church. Now the work of corruption rapidly progressed. Paganism, while appeared to be vanquished, became the conqueror. Her spirit controlled her church, the church. Her doctrines, ceremonies, and superstitions were incorporated into the faith and worship of the professed followers of Christ. So paganism was taken away so that papalism will rise, right? So that's the one with who will letteth is papalism will let and paganism will be taken away, right? Yeah. Right here. So she's talking about conversion of Constantine, which is paganism walking into the church, which is the abomination of desolation coming into the church, right? Roman standards. Roman standards. Paganism is being brought into the church. And this is what she's talking right here. Yeah. This compromise, right, between paganism and Christianity resulted in development of the man of sin, foretold in the prophecy as opposing and exalted himself above God. So what she's doing is connecting Daniel 11:36 with 2 Thessalonians 2, verse 4 to 7, right? Yeah, you see that? That's how you can connect it, because you can see this is talking about Daniel 11:36. That's when they compromise, and this is also talking about 2 Thessalonians, right? Opposing himself. This gigantic system of false religion is a masterpiece of Satan's power, a monument of his effort to seat himself upon the throne to rule the earth according to his will. Okay. Yeah. All right. I'm just gonna finish this one right here. We're gonna finish with this one. What happened in 538? Now this one we haven't studied before. We haven't studied, so this one is new. Some of the other stuff we've studied before is a review, but this one we haven't studied. This is found in The History of Sabbath and the First Day of the Week by J.N. Andrews. J.N. Andrews is they named Andrews University for J.N. Andrews, right? But he wrote a book called History of the Sabbath and the First Day of the Week, right? Under Clodovius, King of France, he met the bishops in the first councils of Orleans. So he had a council of Orleans in 507, where they obliged themselves and their successors to be always at the church on the Lord's Day. Okay, the Lord's Day is a Sunday, right? Yeah, this we're talking about France in 507 here. Okay, they said we have to be in church on Sunday, except in the case of sickness or some great infirmity. And because they, with some other of the clergy in those days, took cognizance of judicial matters, therefore by the Council of Aragon about the year 518, right, it was decreed that no bishop or other person in holy orders should examine or pass judgment in any civil controversy on the Lord's Day. They said, okay, you bishops, you cannot hold court on Sunday. Why? Because they were doing it. So they said, no longer. You cannot do it. You cannot do it on a Sunday. This is for the clerks and the bishops, right? This shows that the civil courts were sometimes held on Sunday by the bishops in those days. Otherwise, such a prohibition would not have been put forth. Make sense? Right? Because they were doing it. They were holding court on a Sunday. And so now there comes a law that says, no more. Your courts cannot be on Sunday. All right. Hengstenberg, in his notice on the Third Council of Orleans, gave us an insight into this the then existing state of the Sunday festival on Sunday. The Third Council of Orleans in 538. 538 is very important, right? 538, that's the beginning of the 1260. What happened in 538? The Third Council of Orleans says in its 29th canon, the opinion is spreading amongst the people that it's wrong to ride or drive or cook food or do anything to the house or the person on the Sunday. But since such opinions were more Jewish than Christian, that should be lawful in future, which has been so to the present time. On the other hand, agricultural labor ought to be laid aside in order that the people may not be prevented from attending church. So why is it that they are not to labor in agriculture? So they won't miss church. So the reason why you have to be in, so the reason, the way of for them to show that they are worshiping on a Sunday is by going to church, right? And that's the main reason. Okay, does that sound familiar? Yeah, so it's really not about doing the work. It's okay if you do the work, but as long as you go to church.
Go to church first and then you go to...
Observe the reason assigned. It is not lest they violate the law of the Sabbath, but it is that they may not be kept from church. Right? So it's you just make sure you're in church. It doesn't matter what you do, just be in church. Just pay your tithes. Just be loving. And you're going to be saved. All right. Another authority states the case thus. Labor in the country on Sunday was not prohibited till the Council of Orleans, AD 538. So now you cannot labor anymore. But initially they said it's really because so you have to be in church. But now they said labor is outlawed now. So now they put it into civil law in France in 538. The civil law says that you cannot even labor on a Sunday. And thus, it was thus an institution of the church, as Dr. Paley has remarked. The earlier Christians met in the morning of that day for prayer and singing hymns in the commemoration of Christ's resurrection, and then went about their usual duties. Yeah. So it became a law that you cannot work on a Sunday. Now, I didn't put it there because there's going to be so much. I just had to read the whole chapter. Oh boy. But anyway, I'm going to read part of it also here, that in the year 681, the Jews were forbidden to keep their festivals. They were, in 681, eventually, Sabbath was forbidden. So it's a progression, you know. First, these things happen. First, they said, okay, you can keep Sabbath, but you also need to keep Sunday also. And then eventually it says, oh no, you can't work on Sunday. Now it's a law says you can't work on Sunday. Eventually there's a law that says you can't go to church on Sabbath. So it's a progression. You will see the progression. And Ellen White says this is what's going to happen in the end time. Yeah, there's going to be progression until the Sunday law. So first, that's why there's going to be the siege. There's going to be 3 different sieges, because there's going to be 3 different Sunday laws, kind of like everything kind of a progression leading up to the Sunday law, where Sabbath is actually prohibited by law. All right. Oh, we still got a ways to go here, but we'll continue. We will end right now and we'll continue next week. We're not done with Abomination of Desolation yet, but we will continue next week. All right. And this is the more sure of prophecy. All right. Okay. We'll continue